Hello, Dayton. Welcome once again to the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. The Retirement Blueprint show is all about retirement planning needs for you, our viewers, right here in Dayton. Tim, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Spike.
Well, it's a great program that we have here. You've put together some wonderful information. We're talking about roadblocks to our retirement, not just getting ready for it, but other things that can affect us while we're in retirement. There's quite a few. We know what construction season is like when it hits Ohio, right? And sometimes it feels like that's what's going on with our retirement. There's all these barriers that are being put in the way. So we want to talk about how today's retirement is different, what some of those roadblocks are, and more importantly, how to get them out of the way.
And not to be like I-75, which is constantly under construction somewhere. It's like a year-round, multi-year. I don't remember that those orange barrels are everywhere, right?
Yeah, I just thought when I was growing up, I thought, oh, that's what a road looks like.
Yeah, orange barrels.
It's that, and it's got then those orange cones all over the construction season. Well, we don't want it to be construction season when it comes to our retirement, but there are a lot of roadblocks. Let's start with one of them that is quite obvious to a lot of folks out there, market volatility, specifically today, downside market volatility. And we've got to talk about risk. You use a great tool inside the office. It's called the Riskalyze. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But let's conceptually talk about risk. When you go to a financial planning firm, somebody might ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, what does risk feel like to you? Now, first of all, I don't know, what am I supposed to say 1? Do I say 10? What is it in between? The number doesn't mean a lot to me because my risk could be completely different what your risk is, or we could actually be on the same page, but it's defined differently.
Well, your number 5 could be different than my number 5.
Right.
Right? And so I think that is that question, and we ask that question because it is a gauge, it is a conversation starter. If somebody says that they're a 2, most people's 2 is the same. I know that person is super conservative.
But their 2 is really a 0.
Right, their 2. They just were embarrassed to say 0. The other piece of it is if they say they're an 8 or a 9, I know that they are aggressive. If they say that they're middle of the road, then I know that there's parameters there. They're probably somewhere between a 3.5 and a 6 or a 7, right?
But a wonderful conversation you and I were having recently is that rather than using a scale of a 1 to 10, let's use real dollar amounts, okay? For instance, and this is quite common for folks who have been working for 30 or 40 years. Let's say you have $1 million saved, or $500,000, whatever number you want in your head. Now, we can talk about this in real dollar amounts as far as loss, right? For instance, if the markets have gone down and you lost $10,000 in your accounts, most people wouldn't feel a lifestyle difference, right?
Right.
But if the number was much more larger, let's say you have $1 million and you lost $200,000 or $300,000, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to take that amount of risk. That's an easier way to have that conversation, right?
It is, and Riskalyze actually does that for folks. And so what Riskalyze does, and again, this won the Nobel Prize for Economics. I mean, this is a really good software. It's not our software. It's a software that we subscribe to in the office. But the thing I love about it is that it will take a person's portfolio exactly the way that it is right now. We put it in, it pulls a lot of data from Morningstar and other areas, and it can tell you exactly how that portfolio did in 2008. So in dollar amounts, so you can look at it and see that $1 million went down 250 grand. That's a conversation starter. That is a lot more accuracy minded than, well, I'm a 6 or on that scale from 1 to 10. They can look at it because the important thing is, Spike, for them to recognize that if that number is not a number they're comfortable with, when do you want to fix that? When things are bad or when things are good?
Right.
And so making sure to educate them on what they have today, because they've forgotten 2008. They just have. We've had too many good years.
It is unbelievable. And we talk about the behavioral biases now and then. It's something that I've taken a lot. There are behavioral biases that we don't even realize. One of them is recency bias. Now, 2008 is not very recent. But we have forgotten that because we're not paying attention. For those of us who refuse to study our history are doomed to repeat it, right? And I think we were lulled, though, into a false sense of confidence because of how well the markets did since 2008. The markets continued to go up and up. So there's two sides to this risk, taking it incorrectly, one taking too much and one taking too little. Let's talk first about overcorrecting. There's a lot of folks out there who might say, the markets are too risky. I have seen my accounts take losses. I'm going to move to cash.
And we've seen that in the office.
Well,
Of people coming into the office that are leaving their advisor that have decided, you know what, we went to cash because we were afraid.
Right. And now, is that too much of an overcorrection, or is there somewhere of a middle ground?
Well, if it's already done, it's too late. I mean, they already did it, right? But the conversation really should be the money that you're worried about, why are you worried about it? What's that money's job? Now, if its job is to create income, then I think volatility is absolutely a conversation because we can't have a lot of volatility attached to something that we know we have to take out over time. The flip side is if we're not taking income from it, is volatility really that big of an issue? Not saying that it doesn't feel bad, but is volatility really an enemy if that money can be left alone for 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
And that is a bigger part of the conversation, and I think that's the hard thing for people to realize. You're looking at your retirement accounts, yes, those losses are real. We totally understand. Have they gone down 15, 20, or 25%? But when do you plan to use that money? That's one of the things that you talk about all the time. What's the purpose of that money?
That's it. And so, you know, a lot of times people want to think about risk in terms of their age. It's not in terms of your age, it's in terms of what the money is supposed to do for you. What's its job? What's its purpose? You know, we have people that retire at 55, we have people that retire at 75 or 80. I just talked to a person last week, this is incredible. They work at Ohio State University. They're 92 years old, still going to work every day. And the wife was calling me because he's thinking about retiring. He's 92. 92. So it's a different strategy for each person. You have to look not just at your age, but again, what stage are you in? And that stage is not always connected to your birthday.
92 years old. Still thinking.
I was
thinking about
I
retirement.
actually asked her to repeat. Now, how old did you say he was? He said 92. Still going to work every day.
That is fantastic. Now, so obviously, his definition of risk would be completely different than somebody who might be 60 or 62 saying, I want to retire early, because their risk is, will their money last as long?
And he's got a legitimate argument about not being as afraid of inflation because he's 92, right? And
it's like, inflation? Don't put that in the calculation. I'm not worried about that.
Not worried about that.
Longevity? Nah, don't worry about that one. He wants to know how he can live life.
Well, I would be worried about longevity. If I was 92 and still going to work every day, I mean, clearly this guy's going to be around for a bit, right?
That's right. So for somebody who is already, let's say, 92 or 82 or even 72, is the retirement blueprint suitable for somebody who's ready at retirement age, or is it more about a planning structure about getting to retirement?
Well, Spike, the planning process is a lifelong process. It doesn't matter when you're coming into it or what age you're coming into it. It's still applicable. Now, when you're looking at, you know, do some of the dynamics change? Absolutely. But those same dynamics change for people who have had that plan for the last 20 years. We're still updating and making adjustments and changes because that's life. We are here to do life with our clients, not create a plan and then send them on their way. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. We have to take a very short break. Folks, do you have your own retirement plan? Do you know exactly what it is? The income strategy, how much risk you're taking in your accounts? Do you know what to do with taxes and how to protect them as best as you can? Do you have an estate plan, meaning are you leaving money to anyone? The retirement blueprint covers all of these bases and more. So whether you're 62 or whether you're 92, you want to make sure that you have a written retirement plan. The best way to do that, if you're right here in Dayton, is call Tim Lofton and the team at the phone number you see right here, 855-684-3485. We will continue to talk about retirement roadblocks on the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton when we get back right after this.
We're passionate about making sure our clients live stress-free in retirement. We do that with the Retirement Blueprint. It's our trademark planning process designed to help you navigate to and through retirement. When you're nearing retirement, it's essential that you have a written plan and know exactly how that plan will work for you. Let us show you how 27 years of experience can make a difference in your plan.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. Today we're talking about retirement roadblocks, the things that are getting in our way. What we were just talking about in the previous segment was risk, taking too much, taking too little. Right now, I want to pivot over to taxes. Taxes are one of those things that it feels like we don't really have a lot of control over, right? Mm-hmm. And honestly, if you go back to a retirement 30 or 40 years ago, come on, you would get the gold-plated watch, you'd get a sheet cake with your name on it, thanks Bob for your years of service, and your pension plan would kick in, and taxes weren't as much of a concern, but I think you've got some numbers right now that say that taxes are one of the big things we need to be paying attention to.
Well, taxes are a moving target. We've talked about inflation a lot on this show and the slow erosion that it has on our purchasing power. Taxes are part of that conversation. While taxes in and of themselves are not inflationary, they are absolutely the same impact, which is lessening my purchasing power. If I take money out of my IRA and I pay 20% taxes or 30% taxes, there's a difference, right? I'm getting less money, which means I now have less money to be able to live my lifestyle and pay for my lifestyle.
Right, but we've been convinced for 30 or 40 years to save our money into these tax-deferred accounts.
Sure.
And so we've been able to subtract that. But now what? We need to start drawing from those accounts. But we're in a pretty low tax environment right now.
Which creates opportunity and has created opportunity really for the last 10 years or so, where we've seen people achieve some major tax benefits through things like Roth IRA conversion or spin downs of their retirement plans while they're still in that low income tax bracket. When they transition from working and their income drops a bit, there creates a gap there where they can actually take advantage of that. But that time could be coming to an end. As we see tax brackets increase, there becomes less and less of an opportunity there. Now, it still may exist. There's actual software that we use to figure out whether or not it makes sense to people. But there is an opportunity. There's another thing that just happened. In fact, this just hit my desk. I had a client of mine that dropped it by. He works for Harvard Risk Management Corporation, and they specialize in helping people on the employer side. So these are people that are self-employed or own businesses. And I didn't even know about this, Spike. I don't know if you've heard of this thing. It's called an employee retention credit.
No, I haven't heard of it. What is this?
Well, so the employee retention credit is an IRS credit. This goes back to 2020 and 2021 for the folks that were a business owner that retained their employees. That's the retention part of the credit. They get up to $13,000 per employee per year. So a total of $26,000 potentially as a deduction credit on their taxes per employee.
If I'm getting this correctly, so this is something that could be amazing for the small business owners of Ohio. Let's say the employee retention credit. How long will this last? Do you think this legislation will go on through?
I think this is it.
2 years. Okay.
And again, I don't make those rules, but
don't shoot the messenger, and you're not running for office yet.
And one of the questions that's come up a lot with this is, what if somebody took one of those EIDL loans or the PPP money to help? It is not impacted. The way I understand it, if you go to the IRS website, you can actually pull up information on this. And I would encourage our business owners in the viewership to do that. You go to irs.gov and look at this employee retention credit and make sure that your CPA is versed on this, because this is a really big deal.
Small business CPA, whoever you're using for that. This is one of those things where having a financial advisor, of course, Tim does the retirement blueprint, and the idea is to help you with everything your retirement planning needs. But just this one small piece of information for the small business owner out there, this in no way benefits what Tim and the firm do here, but just letting you know this information is going to help you keep more in your pocket. Just these small pieces and facts of information, the retirement roadblock. So think about that. Small business owner, did you keep 4 employees because you cared about their family, them being able to stay employed? You'll be able to get
It's almost $100,000.
almost $100,000 right there from keeping your business doors open and keeping these employees around. This is something to let your CPA know about.
Don't thank me, thank Mr. Yates, my client. He was great to share this information with me, because I had not.
But it's more for me about you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
And it's the same thing when it comes to retirement planning. We don't know what we don't know about taxes. You do this every single day in the offices, and it's oftentimes uncovering just sometimes these simple little buttons and levers that you can push to help make sure that people.
This is big. This is really big. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to retirement taxes, let's talk about, we haven't done this in a little bit, the Roth conversion. We continue to get phone calls on this no matter how much we talk about it. We have those tax protected accounts, meaning those tax deferred accounts that we've been using. Right now could be a great opportunity to do what is called the Roth conversion right now. Why is this such a great opportunity right now?
Well, you know, for a couple of reasons. You already talked about the one, and that is that the tax rates are still historically very, very low. The other thing is, you know, we kind of talk doom and gloom about volatility, but volatility creates an opportunity when we start talking about Roth conversion, because our account values are down, which means that we can convert, you know, when we're taking money out. If we're going back into the same thing when it goes back up, you know, we basically pay taxes on a smaller dollar amount.
Right.
So that opportunity is great. The end result, what we're trying to get to, Spike, with this is required, I can't even say the words, required minimum distribution.
It's hard enough to
RMD.
wrap our heads around.
I didn't want to say
minimum distributions.
I didn't want to say RMD.
But it is required. It is not optional. So we've talked about, and this is one of the big, huge roadblocks of retirement, this ticking tax time bomb that's coming. Say that 3 times.
That's alliteration. I remember that from school.
That's right. So we've got our required minimum distributions at 72. Social Security, which is now taxable. That changed in the 80s with a certain president. And then, of course, pulling our money out of these tax-protected accounts. So we've got taxes that are quite literally going to be going up on us as we move into retirement. And having a tax-forward strategy, I think, is incredibly important. Is this something that you address inside the retirement blueprint? Of
course. You know, it's one of the main cornerstones of retirement planning, is looking at not only today's tax impact, but more importantly, the future tax impact. Because when you start doing required minimum distribution planning, you're not looking at the impact at 75 or even 80. You're looking at that 80 to 90, because that's when your problems come. Remember, and for the folks at home that don't understand this, your withdrawal amount, your required minimum distribution, is not a fixed percentage. It goes up every single year. So you have this rising increase.
So even though you're going to be taking more money out of your accounts, you could also be getting hit with higher taxes along the way, which means the money that you're taking out, it could be a larger amount, but you're losing purchasing power against
It's a perfect
inflation.
storm.
It's a perfect storm. Folks, please call right now and get your own complimentary retirement blueprint started with Tim Lofton. There was no cost to it, but we don't know if you need help if you don't reach out to us here. We are well aware of the risks of not understanding your investment portfolio in retirement. We are well aware of the ticking tax time bomb. Are you? Call someone like Tim to help you out with it. 855-684-3485. More retirement roadblocks when we get back right after this break.
Hi, I'm Tim Lofton, and for 27 years, we've been helping people just like you navigate to and through retirement with our trademark process, the Retirement Blueprint. Many of our clients are extremely concerned today with the increasing federal debt and the potential for a significant increase in taxes. If you share these or other retirement concerns, give us a call today for a no-obligation complimentary consultation. Let us plan your tomorrow today.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I'm your host, Spike Spengel. Today we are talking about your retirement roadblocks, how they get in the way, and more importantly, how Tim can move them out of the way for us. And oddly, I was really surprised when you brought up this topic, is a retirement roadblock is legacy planning. I thought, well, you've already won the game. I mean, if you're wanting to leave something behind to the family, isn't that already doing well? What are some of the things that you wanted us to be aware of when it comes to legacy planning?
Well, when you're thinking about passing money on, you have to remember the responsibility of it and who is going to get this money. And so, legacy planning, estate planning in general has different seasons. So, when you're young and you have young kids, it's about, if something happens to you, maybe who's going to raise the kids and how are they going to be taken care of, and leaving some additional life insurance to your spouse, those types of things. As we approach retirement, at 65, we're talking about kids usually in their 30s, maybe 40s. And so you have to ask that question of, all right, if I died today and each of my kids got $1 million, what does that look like? Are they able to handle it? And, we've had so many conversations in the office where, I ask that question and a client will say, well, we have 3 kids and 2 of them are doing really well, but then, we have one that's not. Fill in the blank there. Maybe there's a chemical dependency issue or alcoholism or, gambling problems, or maybe they just have a volatile marriage and they're worried that, if they pass on money to their son or daughter and then they go through a divorce, that half that money is going to go to their ex. There's all these different moving parts. And so one of the great things about creating a trust, for example, allows you to control that money. It allows you, we jokingly say you can control the money from the grave. That's not the happiest thought, but you can indeed put, parameters on that money.
Yeah, and that's actually a good thing to talk about, in that you have done well. You've perhaps won the game, if you will. But another way that we've probably, none of us are getting out of this alive, right? So we're not taking it with us, and it's actually can be a fun, or at least a constructive conversation to say, what would we like to do with this when we're no longer around? But you hopped straight to the kids. I want to slow it down. I want to pump the brakes. Let's go right to our spouse. First of all, if we have a spouse, then we'll talk also about being single and needing an estate plan. But of course, things like the house and anything with a beneficiary designation are going to pass directly to our spouse. But there's an element that we do need to address. What about our own capacity? Sometimes we need to go into long-term care, or we have to worry about things like Alzheimer's in our own memory. And again, it's a lot to put onto the kids to take care of mom or dad. So also,
or if you don't have kids.
Oh, exactly. All right. So maybe we have enough of a nest egg. I pass away. My spouse then needs memory care. But who are we going to determine to do that? And this is part of determining what we do in a trust and those medical directives.
Sure, and even more today. And I just saw these numbers and was really surprised. We're at a 60% divorce rate in this country.
Wow,
and
I did not see the 60%.
60%, and up from 50, which was already a crazy number. And so you have a lot of second marriages, which brings in to this same conversation of when you get married, you're bringing those risks into this new marriage. And if there was kids on each side, it becomes very, very complicated. You can see from just a general, so
and you can accidentally disinherit kids or disinherit the current wife. This, I think, is this one of the basics of what you do, is reviewing all of the beneficiaries?
All of the beneficiaries. And so, we look at, like, we had a client, second marriage, that they didn't have kids. And as we're putting the plan together, in their mind, they said, well, if something happens because we don't have kids, whenever we die, we want our part to go to wherever it's supposed to go. And in their case, it was charity. Well, you know, the question that we uncovered that we asked was, but your income right now is based on these assets. So if you give them away immediately, you're going to cut off, in their case, 40% of the income. They're like, well, we didn't think of that. So it's things like that where there's a plan maybe in your mind of how you want things to go, but you don't think about the actual impact of those same decisions as you're putting that plan together.
I'm almost worried to know what kind of divorce stories have you seen, because you're kind of that protection. You're making sure, so you review these things beforehand to make sure the money goes where you need it to. Now, I also know that with the TV shows, with your financial practice, there's no way that you can be a lawyer too.
No.
Just too much time.
I read a lot of John Grisham though, so that I got that
That's
going
right.
for me. So whatever that does for the people's confidence at home right now.
Right, but you are well versed in the legal needs of putting together these kinds of documents. And then what do you do as far as the firm? Do you sort of help quarterback the entire situation?
We do, and so, you know, we're bringing in our estate planning partner to do that exact piece. So we have somebody that's all they do is estate planning. They have been to law school. I don't know if they also read John Grisham or not, but that's not important. The question is, we have the ability to create those documents from somebody that's their specialty.
Right. So if you don't mind, before we wrap up today's show, we were talking about different retirement roadblocks. The three we were able to cover today, we're talking about risk, we're talking about taxes, and even legacy planning, and how that can be a risk to enjoying your retirement. But would you mind just telling me what are some of the bases that we would cover by starting someone with the retirement blueprint if they pick up the phone right now?
Well, the easiest thing in the world is to sit down with us. We don't expect for people to come in with a lot of background. We have the questions to ask. We've been asking those questions for 30 years, and that's what we're looking for, that opportunity. You describe your retirement, you describe your family and what you want to have happen. We know how to build a plan to meet those needs.
Why it's so important today to pick up the phone. Would you say that retirement today is easier or harder than it used to be?
Definitely harder, without a doubt.
Folks, thank you so much for watching the Retirement Blueprint. If you would like to get your complimentary process started, all you have to do is call the phone number you see right here, 855-684-3485. Thank you for watching the Retirement Blueprint with Tim Lofton. I'm your host, Spike Spengel, and we will be back next week like we are every week, helping you with your retirement planning needs.